Clara Mae Braddock dropped to her knees in the Wyoming dust and shoved her wedding ring into the wagon driver's calloused palm. "Take it. Take everything I got left. Just don't turn this wagon around." 3 days since the bank had taken her home. 3 days since she'd buried her husband under a tree with no name. The driver looked down at her, at all of her, and spat tobacco into the dirt. "Ma'am, that rancher up the road, Whitfield, he's a hard man. Got 6 grieving children he won't even look at. A woman of your stature ain't gonna last a sundown out there." Clara stood up. Before we ride down that long, dusty road with Clara, hit that subscribe button below and ring the bell so the next part of this story finds you the moment it goes live. And drop a comment telling me what city or town you're watching from tonight, because I want to see how far Clara Mae Braddock's story is traveling across this great country of ours. Now stay right here, because what happens on that ranch in the next 2 hours is going to break your heart and put it back together stronger than before. The driver, a man named Polk, took his time getting the wagon moving again. He didn't take the ring. He looked at it and then at her, and finally let out a long breath that smelled like chewing tobacco and morning whiskey. "Put that fool thing back on your finger, Mrs. Braddock. I ain't a thief." "Then drive." "I'm driving." He flicked the reins, and the 2 old mules pulled forward. Clara climbed back up into the wagon seat with effort, her hands shaking, her dress damp through with sweat she could not afford to wash out. "Mr. Polk." "Ma'am?" "How far now?" 6 miles to the Whitfield gate, 8 to the house." "Tell me about him again." "Told you all I'm going to tell you." "Tell me anyway." Polk glanced sideways at her. He had the kind of face that had been weathered by 40 years of Wyoming wind, and it was the face of a man who did not waste words on women he did not expect to see twice. "Jesse Whitfield don't talk. Not since his wife passed. 18 months ago this spring. Childbirth took her and the baby with her. Folks say he ain't spoken her name once since the burial. And the children, 6 of 'em. Oldest is Caleb, 16, and he runs that house like a sergeant in his daddy's army. Then there's Rosie, 14, and she's been the cook. Or she's been trying to be. Then the twins Samuel and Silas, 10 years old. A quiet boy they call Henry, 8. And the baby of the lot is Pearl, 5 years old. Don't speak hardly at all anymore. 6 children with no mother. 6 children with a father who might as well be a ghost. Last 3 women I drove out to that ranch didn't last a fortnight, ma'am. The widow Hatcher made it 9 days. The Garrison girl made it 4. And the school teacher from over Cheyenne way well. He chuckled without any humor in it. She made it as far as the front porch and asked me to turn right around. Why? Because Jesse Whitfield don't want a wife and his children don't want a mother. They want their own mama back, and when they can't have her, they make whoever walks in next pay for it. Clara was quiet a long stretch. The wagon creaked beneath her weight. She knew the sound. She had been making chairs and wagons creak her entire life. "I ain't here to be their mother." "Then what are you here for, Mrs. Braddock?" "I'm here to cook, to keep house, to earn enough money to bury my own grief somewhere private. That's all." Polk nodded slow. "Well, that's the most honest answer I have ever heard come out of any woman who took this road." He looked her over again. Not unkind, just plain. "Forgive me saying so, ma'am, but you're a sizable woman." "I am." "And folks out here, they ain't always charitable to a body that takes up more room than they reckon a body ought to. I have heard worse than what's coming, Mr. Polk." "From who?" "From everyone I have ever met." He gave a low whistle. The wagon rolled on. The Wyoming sun climbed higher, and the dust kicked up by the mules settled into the folds of Clara's morning dress. "Mr. Polk." "Ma'am?" "If he turns me away at the door, will you wait?" "I'll wait an hour." "That's all I'm asking for." The Whitfield Ranch came into view over a ridge of yellow grass, and Clara saw the house first. Long, low, weathered gray with a front porch that sagged on the left side like a man who had been hit too many times. A boy was waiting at the gate. He looked 16 and he looked 30 both at once. Dark hair. His father's mouth, Clara guessed, set in a hard line. "You the cook?" "I am. Clara May Braddock." "My name's Caleb." He didn't take her hand. "Pa ain't home." "When'll he be back?" "When he's back." Polk leaned over from the wagon seat and tipped his hat to the boy. "Caleb, brought your new cook." "I see what you brought." "You gonna let her down?" "She can let herself down." Clara climbed out of the wagon. Her boots hit the dirt, and her ankles complained, and she pretended they didn't. She walked to the gate with her chin up. "Caleb?" "Ma'am?" "You don't have to like me." "I don't." "Good, then we understand each other." She held out her hand. He looked at it for a long second, and Clara could see his mama's manners at war with whatever he had been taught since she had died. The manners won just barely. He shook her hand once hard. "Bag in the wagon." "Just the one." "I'll get it." He walked past her and Polk handed down a single canvas bag. Caleb hefted it like it weighed nothing, which it nearly did, and started toward the house without looking to see if she followed. "Mr. Polk." "Ma'am." "Thank you. You sure you don't want me to wait?" "I'm sure." "Mrs. Braddock?" "Yes." "You ain't what I expected." "What did you expect?" He chewed his lip. "I expected a woman who'd cry." "I cried it all out 3 days ago, Mr. Polk." He tipped his hat slow and solemn, and the wagon rolled away from the Whitfield gate and disappeared back down the long road toward town. Clara stood alone in the dust. The boy was already at the porch. She straightened her shoulders. She walked. Caleb pushed the front door open without knocking, and the smell hit Clara first. Sour milk. Burnt flour. Something that had been a stew once and had given up on itself. "Pa says the kitchen's yours." "Where are the others?" "Around." He set her bag down inside the door and stood with his arms crossed, watching her like a man waiting to be disappointed. "Caleb." "Ma'am?" "How long since this kitchen had a woman in it?" 18 months. "How long since it was cleaned?" 18 months. She nodded. She walked past him into the kitchen. There were dishes in the sink and dishes on the table and dishes on the floor. There was a barrel of flour with mice in it. There was a cured ham hanging from a beam that had gone gray on one side. There was a girl in the corner. The girl was 14. She was thin. She had a burn on her wrist that had nothing to do with anyone hitting her. Clara recognized stove handle marks when she saw them. The girl was holding a wooden spoon like she meant to swing it. "You Rosie." "I'm Rosie Whitfield." "My name is Mrs. Braddock. I am the new cook." "We don't need a new cook." "Your pa says different." "My pa don't know what we need." Clara set her bag on a chair that wasn't quite broken. She took her late husband's apron from around her waist where she had been wearing it like a belt. She tied it on. The apron was a man's apron, and it didn't fit her, but it never had, and she wore it anyway because her husband had stitched her name into the corner with the only embroidery he had ever done in his life. "Rosie. Mrs. Braddock. You been cooking for your brothers and your sister and your daddy for 18 months. I have. You been doing it without a mother to teach you, and without enough food to feed 6, and you been getting up before the sun and going to bed long after it, and you been burning yourself on that stove because the handles broke and ain't nobody fixed it." The girl's chin trembled just once. "I been doing fine. You been doing the work of a grown woman child. I ain't here to take that from you. I am here to share it. You want to keep cooking, you cook. You want a day off, you take one. But that stove handle gets fixed today, and that flour barrel gets emptied and burned, and I will not in this house tolerate mice in my pantry." Rosie didn't speak. "Where are your brothers?" "Out back." "And your sister, Pearl?" Rosie's voice softened just a hair. "She's under the table." Clara looked. There was indeed a small girl under the kitchen table, knees drawn up, hands over her ears, watching Clara with eyes the size of saucers. Pearl, age 5. Hair like corn silk. A cotton dress that had been white once. Clara lowered herself to the floor. It was a slow business with her knees, but she did it. She met the child eye to eye. "Hello, Pearl." The child stared. "You don't have to come out from under there." The child stared. "You don't have to talk to me neither. You can take all the time you need. I ain't going nowhere." The child blinked. Once. Slow. Clara levered herself back up to her feet, breathing harder than she liked, and turned to Rosie. "Where's the broom?" The boys came in at 3 o'clock, and they came in like a herd. Samuel and Silas, the twins, 10 years old, identical, except that Samuel had a chipped front tooth, and Silas had a scar across his eyebrow. Henry ate, quiet as a shadow behind them. Caleb came in last, hat in hand. Clara had the kitchen half clean. The mouse flour was burning in a pile out behind the house. The stove was scrubbed. The dishes were stacked. The ham had been trimmed back to where it was honest meat again. There was a pot of something on the stove that didn't smell like ruin anymore. The twins stopped in the doorway. "Whoa. That's a big lady." "Samuel." "What? Don't say lady that way. Pa says don't." "Why not?" "I don't know. He just says don't." Clara turned from the stove. She had a wooden spoon in her hand and a smile on her face that she had practiced on 100 children before these. "Boys." "Ma'am?" "My name is Mrs. Braddock, and I am going to be cooking for you starting today. You wash your hands at that pump out front before you sit at this table. You sit when I tell you to sit. You eat what I put in front of you. You say please and you say thank you, and you do not speak with your mouths full. We clear on all of that?" "Yes, ma'am." "Yes, ma'am." "Yes, ma'am." From Henry, who barely whispered it. Caleb stood in the doorway and watched. "Caleb?" "Ma'am." "You eat with your brothers, or you eat in the barn. Up to you." "I'll eat with my brothers." "Good." "Mrs. Braddock." "Yes." "What is it?" "What's what?" "In the pot." She lifted the lid. "It's stew, beef and potatoes and a little onion. There's biscuits in the warming drawer." "Biscuits? You ain't had biscuits in a while." "No, ma'am." "Well, you're having biscuits today." The twins washed their hands. Henry washed his hands. Caleb washed his hands. Pearl crawled out from under the table, and Rosie picked her up without a word, and carried her to the basin, and washed her hands for her, and then they all sat down. Clara ladled stew. She set down biscuits. She poured milk. 6 bowls. 6 biscuits. 6 glasses. She did not sit. She stood at the counter, and she watched. The twins ate first, like wolves. "Boys." "Ma'am, slow down. Nobody is going to take it from you. Not in this kitchen. Not while I am standing here." Samuel slowed. Silas slowed. Henry was already eating slow because Henry did everything slow. Caleb ate like a man, which is to say, he ate too fast and pretended he wasn't. Pearl held her spoon and did not eat. Rosie watched her sister. "Pearl, eat." Pearl shook her head. "Pearl." "Rosie." Clara kept her voice low. "Let her be. She has to eat. She'll eat when she's hungry. She ain't been hungry in 18 months, Mrs. Braddock." The room went quiet. The twins stopped chewing. Henry put down his spoon. Caleb looked at the table. Clara looked at the child. The child looked at the wall. "Pearl." The child didn't answer. "You don't have to eat the stew. You can have just a biscuit, with butter on it, or just butter with no biscuit, or you can have nothing at all. But you sit at this table with your family until everyone's done. That's the rule." Pearl looked up. Her eyes were wet, but no tears came down. She picked up the biscuit. She held it. She didn't eat it. She held it like a gift from a person she did not yet trust. That was enough. The sun was setting when Clara heard the boots on the porch. She was alone in the kitchen. The children had eaten. The dishes were in the basin. Rosie had taken Pearl upstairs without a word, and the boys had gone back out to finish the evening chores. Clara had her hands in the soap water when the front door opened. "Caleb." A man's voice, low, tired, the voice of a man who had been outside since dawn. In the kitchen, Pa. Footsteps, slow, heavy. A man in no hurry to meet anyone in his own home. Jesse Whitfield came around the corner and stopped. He was tall, 6'2" easily and broad through the shoulders in the way of men who had done their own work for 38 years. His face was sunburned and wind-cut, and there was a streak of gray running from his temple back into hair the color of old coffee. His eyes were dark. They took her in once head to foot, and they did not change expression. Mrs. Braddock. Mr. Whitfield. Caleb tells me you got the kitchen sorted. I got it started. He nodded. He didn't take off his hat. He stood just inside the doorway and held himself there like a man who had forgotten how to enter his own house. Pays $8 a month, room and board. You want Sundays off, you take 'em. You want church, the wagon goes Sunday morning. You don't want church, that's your business. Yes, sir. Children give you trouble. No, sir. They will. I expect so. He looked at her. Direct. Mrs. Braddock? Sir, my wife's been dead 18 months. I am sorry for your loss. I ain't telling you to apologize. I'm telling you so you know. There ain't no woman gonna take her place in this house. Not in the kitchen. Not anywhere else. You understand me? Yes, sir. That clear. Crystal. He held her eyes a beat longer, like he was waiting for her to flinch or argue or cry. She did none of those things. She had already done her crying. Stew on the stove. Yes, sir. Bring me a bowl. I'll eat in the office. Yes, sir. He turned and walked off down the hall. His office door closed. Clara stood at the basin a moment, her hands in cool soapy water, and she did not let herself shake. She ladled stew. She put a biscuit on the side. She carried it down the hall and knocked on his door. Come. She set the bowl on his desk. He didn't look up. Mr. Whitfield? Ma'am, you don't have to like me. You don't have to talk to me. But I am going to feed your children 3 meals a day, and I am going to keep your house clean, and I am going to do it well, because I gave my word. And when I am done, I am going to draw my wages, and not a thing more. He looked up. Mrs. Braddock? Sir? That'll do. She closed the door behind her. Her room was off the kitchen. It had been a pantry once. There was a narrow cot and a single window and a hook on the door for her dress. She set her bag on the cot. She took out her husband's apron and folded it. She set it on the pillow. She sat down. The cot creaked. She did not trust it, but it held. She did not cry. She had told Polk the truth on the road, and it was still the truth. There was a knock on her door so soft she almost missed it. Yes, the door opened a crack. Pearl stood in the gap. The little girl had a piece of paper in her hand. She held it out. Clara took it. It was a drawing in charcoal smudged at the edges. A house. A barn. 6 small figures. 1 tall figure with a hat, and 1 figure larger than the rest with a circle for a head and a great wide circle for a body, and 2 arms reaching out to all the others. The figure had no name written under it. None of the figures did. But the largest figure was in the middle. Pearl? The child didn't speak. Did you draw this for me? The child nodded once. Can I keep it? The child nodded again. Thank you, sweetheart. The child stared a moment longer. Then she turned and ran on bare feet back through the kitchen and up the stairs. Clara held the drawing in her hands. She held it like a thing too precious to lay down. She had been in the Whitfield house for 7 hours. In another room of that same house, a man who had not spoken his wife's name in 18 months sat alone at a desk and looked at the empty bowl in front of him and could not understand why the bread had tasted like the bread his wife used to bake. He pushed the bowl away. He did not sleep that night. Neither did Clara May Braddock. But for the first time in 3 days, she was not afraid of the morning. Morning came gray and cold, and Clara was up before any of them. She had a fire going in the stove and biscuits in the oven before the rooster even thought about crowing. Pearl's drawing was folded into the pocket of her apron against her hip where she could feel it. The first one down the stairs was Henry, 8 years old, quiet as a barn cat. Mrs. Braddock? Henry? Are you still here? She turned from the stove. The boy was standing in the doorway in a nightshirt that had been his older brother's once, and his hair was sticking up on one side, and he was looking at her like a person looks at a thing that might disappear. I am still here, child. You didn't leave in the night. I did not. The other ladies left in the night. Did they? The schoolteacher one, she left her shoes. Clara almost laughed. She caught it in time. Well, I ain't leaving Henry. Not in the night, not in the morning, not till your daddy tells me to go. Sit down at the table. I'll bring you a biscuit. He sat. He watched her hands. He ate the biscuit she set in front of him in 3 bites, and then stared at the empty plate, like he wasn't sure if asking for another would cost him something. Henry. Ma'am. You want another biscuit, you say so. Can I have another biscuit? You can have 3 more biscuits. 3. If your stomach can hold them. He looked at her like she had offered him the moon. She slid 2 more onto his plate. He ate them slow this time, like he was making them last. The twins came down next Samuel, first Silas, a step behind both of them, already arguing about something that had happened the night before. You took it. I didn't. You did. I had it under my pillow and you took it. I didn't take your stupid arrowhead, Samuel. Boys. They stopped. They looked at her. They looked at the table. There was a plate of biscuits in the middle and a pot of gravy beside it, and they had not seen gravy on the breakfast table in 18 months. Sit down. They sat. Eat. They ate. Caleb came down with his hat already on like a man on his way somewhere. He stopped in the kitchen doorway. Mrs. Braddock. Caleb. Pa wants me to ride into town today. You need anything from the mercantile, you write it down. I'll write a list. You got a hand to write? She looked up from the stove. He met her eyes and didn't drop them. I have got a hand to write, Caleb. I have also got a hand to slap a 16-year-old boy who thinks his cleverness is going to run a woman off this ranch. Do not test the second hand. Sit down and eat. Henry made a small sound. It might have been a laugh. Caleb's ears turned red. He sat down. He ate 3 biscuits and did not say one more word until he was done. Rosie came down last with Pearl on her hip. Pearl had her thumb in her mouth and her face buried in her sister's neck. Rosie set her at the table. Pearl did not let go of Rosie's collar. Mrs. Braddock. Rosie. Pearl had a bad night. How bad? She was up 3 times. She gets like that when there's been a change. I see. I just thought you should know, since you'll be the one with her today. I appreciate that. Rosie nodded once. She started to ladle gravy onto her own biscuit, and Clara saw it then. The wrist. The burn. It had reopened sometime in the night, raw and red and weeping a clear, thin fluid, and the girl was eating with her left hand because the right one couldn't grip a spoon. Rosie. Ma'am. Set down that spoon. The girl set it down. Hold out your wrist. It's nothing. Rosie Whitfield, hold out your wrist. The girl held out her wrist. Clara crossed the kitchen and took the small, thin arm in her hands, and the burn ran from the base of the thumb to halfway up the forearm. And it was not new, and it was not old. It was a burn that had been getting worse for months, because nobody had told the girl how to dress it. How long? Since Christmas. Christmas. I bumped the stove handle. And nobody put salve on it. There ain't any salve. There ain't any salve in this house. No, ma'am. Clara closed her eyes for a second. She opened them. Caleb. Ma'am. You are still going to town today? Yes, ma'am. You are going to add salve to that list. You are going to add clean linen. You are going to add honey, the good kind, not the cheap kind. And you are not coming back to this ranch without all 3, or you are sleeping in the barn. Yes, ma'am. He didn't argue. He didn't smirk. The boy who had stood at the gate and refused to shake her hand the day before was gone, and what was sitting at the table now was a 16-year-old who had just been told that his sister had been burning herself for 5 months, and nobody had thought to fix it. Rosie. Ma'am. After breakfast, you and I are washing that wound, and we are wrapping it in a clean cloth, and you are not touching the stove for 1 week. But I have to. You do not have to. I am here. That is what I am here for. The girl's face crumpled. She put her left hand over her eyes. She didn't make a sound. The twins stopped chewing. Henry stared at his plate. Pearl in her sister's lap lifted her face and looked at Clara, and her eyes were wet but not afraid. That was the moment Pearl spoke for the first time in 8 months. "Mama." It came out so soft, the twins didn't even hear it. Rosie heard it. Rosie's left hand came down off her eyes, and her whole body went still. "Pearl." "Mama." The child was looking at Clara when she said it. Clara, to her credit, did not let her face change. She did not gasp, and she did not cry. She walked across the kitchen, and she crouched down beside the chair where Pearl was sitting in her sister's lap, and she said soft and clear, "I am Mrs. Braddock, sweet girl. Mrs. Braddock. Can you say that?" Pearl looked at her. Pearl said, "Mama Brad." Rosie made a sound like a sob and a laugh at the same time. "Close enough, baby." Clara stood up. Her knees popped. She turned back to the stove. "Eat your breakfast, all of you. The biscuits are getting cold." Caleb left for town at 8. He took Clara's list, and he took 2 of the twins to help carry, and Henry stayed behind because Henry was not a town child. Rosie went up to lie down because Clara had ordered her to, and Clara sat at the kitchen table with Pearl in her lap and a basin of warm water and a clean rag, and she did not say a word for an hour. She just held the child. The child held the apron. After a while, the child fell asleep. Henry came in from the porch. "Mrs. Braddock." "Henry, there's a man at the gate." "What man?" "A man on a black horse. He ain't from around here." Clara's hands tightened just a little on Pearl's back. "Where is your daddy?" "Out at the south pasture." "How far is the south pasture, Henry?" 3 miles. "Go get him." "He told me not to bother him." "Go get him, Henry, right now. You ride that little pony of yours, and you ride hard, and you tell your daddy there is a stranger at the gate, and Mrs. Braddock said, 'Come home.'" The boy looked at her once. He nodded. He ran. Clara stood up. She carried Pearl to the cot in her own little pantry room and laid her down and tucked the apron under her cheek. The child did not wake. Clara closed the door behind her. She walked out the front of the house and down the path, and she did not hurry because she had learned a long time ago that hurrying made men think you were afraid. The man at the gate had not dismounted. He was thin. He had a face like a fox. He had a hat that cost more money than the rest of him put together. "Ma'am." "Sir." "You the new help." "I am the cook." "My name is Travis Bodine. I work for Mrs. Violet Sutley." "I do not know that name." "You will." "Will I?" "Mrs. Sutley owns the bank in Cheyenne. She also owns the note on this ranch. She likes to know who is living on her land." "Mr. Whitfield's land." "Mr. Whitfield's land for now." Clara did not take a step back. She did not take a step forward. She put her hands on the top rail of the gate, and she leaned just a little like a woman who had all the time in the world. "Mr. Bodine?" "Ma'am?" "You can deliver any message you have for Mr. Whitfield to Mr. Whitfield when he returns. Until then, this gate is closed, and I would thank you to keep your horse on the roadside of it." My, the cook has opinions. The cook has manners. The cook is asking nice. The cook would prefer not to ask twice. Travis Bodine smiled. It was not a kind smile. "You're a big woman, ain't you?" "I am." "Mrs. Sutley don't like big women." "Mrs. Sutley does not have to eat my biscuits." "She said you would be trouble." "She said that about me. She said any woman fool enough to come out here in mourning weeds and pretend she could feed 6 children was a desperate woman, and a desperate woman, ma'am, is a woman who can be persuaded." "Persuaded to what?" "To leave." Clara's hands did not move on the gate. Her face did not move. Inside, something old and tired and angry stood up and stretched. "Mr. Bodine." "Ma'am." You go back to your Mrs. Sutley. You tell her I have buried a husband, and I have buried 2 babies, and I have walked 200 miles in 3 days with everything I own in one bag. You tell her that a woman who has done all of that is not a woman who is going to be persuaded by a thin man on a borrowed horse. Borrowed? That horse ain't yours, Mr. Bodine. Your boots don't match your hat. Your hat don't match your face. You are a hired errand boy, and I have been spoken to by better men than you in worse moods than this. Now turn that horse around. The smile left Travis Bodine's face. You watch your mouth, woman. Travis? The voice came from behind her, low, cold. Clara did not turn. She knew the voice. Jesse Whitfield walked up beside her at the gate. He did not have his rifle. He did not need it. He had his hat pulled low and his hands loose at his sides, and he was breathing like a man who had just ridden 3 miles flat out. But he was not breathing hard. Travis, Mr. Whitfield, you come on my land. I come to the gate. You come on my land, Travis. Pass the marker. I saw you from the ridge. I did not. Henry saw you. Mrs. Braddock saw you. I saw you. The thin man's face went a shade lighter. Mr. Whitfield, I am only here on Mrs. Sutley's business. Mrs. Sutley does not have business with my cook. She has business with the note. The note is paid through the spring. It is. Then she does not have business here today. Does she, Travis? No, sir. You go on home. Yes, sir. The thin man wheeled the black horse. He did not look at Clara. He kicked the horse harder than the horse deserved and rode off down the road in a cloud of dust that hung in the air long after he was gone. Jesse Whitfield put both hands on the gate. He did not look at her. Mrs. Braddock. Sir? You handled that. I tried to. You did. A long silence. The wind came up. Somewhere in the house Pearl was sleeping with her thumb in her mouth and her cheek against an old apron. Mr. Whitfield. Ma'am. Who is Mrs. Sutley? She is a widow, from Cheyenne. She married 3 husbands, and she buried 3 husbands, and she got richer with each one. And she owns this ranch. She owns the paper on it. She has owned the paper on it for 2 years. My wife took sick, the doctors cost money, the bank in town would not lend it. Mrs. Sutley would. I took her terms because I had no other terms to take. And now she wants the land. She has wanted the land for 2 years. The land sits between her north property and the river. Without the river, she cannot run cattle on the north property. With the river, she can run twice as many head as she runs now. So she means to take it. She means to make me sell it. And how does she plan to do that? Jesse Whitfield looked at her. For the first time since she had set foot on his ranch, he really looked at her. Not at her size, not at her mourning dress, at her face. She plans to wait. She plans to make life out here harder than it already is. She plans to drive off any help I hire and picket the children and turn the town against us until I cannot stand it no more. And the town? The town does what Violet Sutley tells it to. She owns the bank. She owns the mercantile. She owns half the church pews, and she paid for the schoolhouse roof. She is the town Mrs. Braddock. The rest of us are just borrowing space. Clara nodded slowly. Mr. Whitfield. Ma'am. She sent that boy today because I came yesterday. She did. She is going to send worse. She is. And the children. What about them? You should tell them. I will not tell them. Mr. Whitfield. They have buried their mother. They will not bury this house too. Not while they're children. Not while I can stop it. Clara did not argue. She knew the look on a man's face when a man had decided. She had been married to a man for 19 years. Mr. Whitfield? Ma'am. She came to my gate the same day I did. That was not a coincidence. It was not. She has a person in town watching the road. She has 3, maybe 4. And they told her I came. They did. And she sent that boy to scare me. She did. Mr. Whitfield, I am not scared, but I want you to know something. Tell me. I am not leaving. He looked at her a long second. He did not say thank you. A man like Jesse Whitfield did not say thank you to a woman he had hired 3 days ago. But something in his face moved just a hair, just enough. Mrs. Braddock? Sir. You came out here in mourning weeds. I did. How long since you buried him? 3 days. 3 days? Yes, sir. And you took a wagon 200 miles and you walked into this house and you fed my children. I did. Why? She looked at him. The wind came up again. The black horse was long gone down the road. Because I had to eat too, Mr. Whitfield. And because a woman who has lost everything ain't got nothing left to be afraid of. He nodded once. Slow. Come up to the house. I'll bring in the wood for the stove. Mr. Whitfield. Ma'am? You don't have to bring in the wood. That is my work. It is my house. The wood is mine to bring. He walked past her up the path. Clara stood at the gate a moment longer. She put one hand into the pocket of her apron. She felt the folded edge of the drawing Pearl had given her. She closed her fingers around it. Then she turned and walked up the path after him, and the morning went on. And somewhere in Cheyenne, a woman in a black silk dress was already opening a letter and starting to write a longer one, and every word of it was Clara May Braddock's name. The letter from Cheyenne arrived on a Tuesday. Caleb came back from town with the salve and the linen and the honey, and he came back with one more thing. A folded piece of cream paper sealed with red wax. He set it on the kitchen table without a word. Caleb. Pa, where did you get this? Postmaster handed it to me, said it was for Mrs. Braddock. Clara was at the stove. She turned slow. For me? Yes, ma'am. From who? It don't say, but the red wax had a flower pressed into it. A violet. Jesse Whitfield looked at the seal and his jaw set, and Clara saw the muscle move under his stubble. Open it, Mrs. Braddock. In front of you. In front of me. She wiped her hands on her apron. She broke the seal. The paper opened. The handwriting was pretty. Curled letters looped at the ends, the kind of writing a woman learns at a finishing school in St. Louis, and never lets go. She read it once. She read it twice. Mrs. Braddock. Sir? What does it say? It is an invitation. To what? To tea. Tea. Mrs. Sutley invites me to come into Cheyenne on Friday next to take tea at her house at 4 in the afternoon. She writes that she has heard so much about me from the people of the town, and she wishes to make my acquaintance, woman to woman. Caleb made a sound through his nose. That ain't an invitation. That is a summons. Caleb. Pa, that woman don't drink tea with cooks. Caleb. Yes, sir. Hush. Jesse Whitfield held out his hand. Clara passed him the letter. He read it slow, the way a man reads who has had to teach himself most of what he knows. He folded it back along its lines. He set it on the table. You will not go. Mr. Whitfield. You will not go, Mrs. Braddock. That woman does not invite people to tea. That woman invites people to be measured. Then I will go and be measured. You will not. Mr. Whitfield. Ma'am, I have been measured by every woman with money my whole life. I have been measured at church. I have been measured at the dry goods store. I have been measured by my own mother-in-law, may she rest. I am not afraid of being measured by Violet Sutley. It is not the measuring I am afraid of. What is it? He did not answer right away. He looked at the letter on the table. He looked at his oldest son. He looked at Clara. It is what she does after. The week ran fast. Rosie's wrist began to heal under the salve. Clara dressed it morning and night, and the girl let her, and by Wednesday, the girl was sitting on the kitchen counter, swinging her good leg, and chattering about a horse named Penny, like a 14-year-old girl who had been allowed briefly to be 14. Pearl said 3 more words by Thursday. Mama Brad. Bread. More. The twins had stopped fighting at the table. Henry had stopped flinching when Clara reached past him for the salt. Caleb had stopped wearing his hat in the kitchen. And Jesse Whitfield had started coming home for the noon meal. It happened the first time on Wednesday. He rode in from the north pasture at 12:30, and he tied his horse at the post, and he walked into the kitchen and stood in the doorway with his hat in his hand. "Mr. Whitfield?" "Ma'am." "Are you ill?" "No, ma'am. You have not eaten the noon meal in this kitchen in 18 months. Caleb told me." "Caleb tells you a lot." "He does." "I am not ill, Mrs. Braddock. I am hungry." She fed him. He sat at the head of the table, where he had not sat in 18 months, and the children went quiet around him, and he ate, and after he was done, he looked at his plate a long time, and then he stood up and put his hat back on and walked out without a word. Henry watched him go. Henry whispered, "He came in for dinner." Rosie, who was at the basin, did not turn around. She said, "I know." "Did Mama Brad make him come in?" "No, Henry." "Then why did he come in?" Rosie did not answer. Clara, who had heard, did not answer either. She just kept her hands moving in the dishwater, and she did not let her face do what her heart was trying to make it do. By Friday morning, the dress was ready. Rosie had pulled it out of a trunk in the attic. It had belonged to her mother. It was navy blue plain with a high white collar, and it had been stitched for a smaller woman than Clara. Rosie had taken it apart at the seams and put it back together over 3 nights sewing by candle, and when she held it up by the shoulders on Friday morning, Clara had to sit down at the table. "Rosie?" "Ma'am?" "You stayed up 3 nights to do this." "I did. For me." "Mrs. Braddock, you are going to that woman's house in Cheyenne. You are not going in mourning weeds." "It is your mother's dress." "It was. It is yours now." "Rosie, my mama would have wanted a woman to wear it who was going to fight Violet Sutley. She would not have wanted it sitting in a trunk." The girl's chin was set. Her hands were steady. The burn on her wrist was a pink line now healing clean. Clara stood up. She took the dress from the girl's hands. She held it against her body. She did not cry. She had stopped letting herself cry on the day she walked out of Missouri, and she had not started again. Rosie Whitfield. "Ma'am? When I get back from Cheyenne tonight, I am going to tell you about every single thing that happens in that house, every word, every cup of tea. You are going to know it like you were there." "Yes, ma'am. And then you and I are going to bake a pie, because I think we will have earned a pie." The girl smiled. It was the first time Clara had seen her smile. Caleb drove the wagon into Cheyenne. He had asked to. Jesse had not argued. The boy sat next to Clara on the bench seat with the reins in his hands and his hat pulled low, and he did not speak for the first 6 miles. "Caleb?" "Ma'am?" "You are quiet." "I am thinking." "What about?" "What I will do if she insults you." "You will do nothing, Caleb. That is what you will do. Because it is my insult to take, not yours." "Mrs. Braddock?" "Yes. Pa told me last night about the note, about Mrs. Sutley wanting the land." "He did." "He has not told me before, not in 2 years." "He thought you were a child." "I have not been a child since my mother died." "I know that, Caleb. He is starting to know it too." The boy was quiet a moment. "Mrs. Braddock?" "Yes. He came in for dinner 3 days this week." "I know." "He has not done that since she died." "I know." "What did you say to him?" "I have not said one word to him, Caleb. Not one word that was not about wood or salt or biscuits." "Then why is he coming in for dinner?" She looked at the boy. The boy was looking straight ahead at the road. She could see the muscle in his jaw, and she could see that he wanted an answer she could not give him, because she did not have it. "I do not know, Caleb." "I think I do." "Do not say it." "I will not, ma'am." They rode the rest of the way in a silence that was not unkind. The Sutley house in Cheyenne stood on a corner. 3 stories, white paint, black shutters, a wrought iron gate with a violet worked into the metal. Caleb stopped the wagon at the curb. He set the brake. "I will be at the livery." "You will be on this street, Caleb." "Mrs. Braddock, you will be on this street with this wagon in sight of that front door. If I come out of that house and you are at the livery, I am walking home to Wyoming." "Yes, ma'am." She climbed down. Her boots hit the brick. She straightened the navy dress. She walked up the path to the front door, and she rang the bell. A servant opened. A young black woman in a white cap. Her eyes went to Clara's face first, then to Clara's body, and then back to her face, and what passed between the two women in that moment did not need a word. Mrs. Braddock. Yes. This way, ma'am. She was led down a hall. She was led into a parlor. The parlor was the kind of room that had been decorated by a woman who wanted other women to feel small. Lace on every surface, porcelain on every shelf. A piano nobody played. Violet Sutley stood up from a velvet chair. She was 45. She was beautiful in the way that money makes a woman beautiful. Black hair, a widow's brooch at her throat, a black silk dress that fit her like it had been sewn on her body that morning. Mrs. Braddock? Mrs. Sutley. How kind of you to come. How kind of you to ask. The two women stood. Neither sat. The servant withdrew. The door closed. Please. Clara sat. The chair creaked under her weight. Violet Sutley's eyes flickered to it. She did not smile. Tea. Thank you. A silver tray was already on the small table. 2 cups, 2 saucers, a pot, a plate of small cakes. Violet poured. Her hands were steady. She handed Clara a cup. Clara took it. She did not drink. Mrs. Braddock. Yes. How do you find Wyoming? I find it dry. Yes, it is dry. And cold at night. It is cold at night. And I find the people in it kind on the whole. The first crack in Violet's face. Just a hair. Do you? I find the children kind. I find the men who work the land kind. I find Mr. Whitfield's children especially kind. Mr. Whitfield. Yes, ma'am. You speak of him with familiarity. I speak of him as my employer, the same way I would speak of any man who paid my wages. And what does Mr. Whitfield pay you, Mrs. Braddock? $8 a month, room and board. $8. Yes, ma'am. That is not a great deal of money. It is what we agreed. I could pay you more. There it was, 5 minutes in. The thing she had come to say. Clara set down the cup of tea. She had not taken a sip. Mrs. Sutley. Yes, you did not invite me to this house to talk about my wages. Did I not? You invited me to this house to find out what kind of woman I am. You have spent these last 5 minutes finding out. I will save you the next 10. I am the kind of woman who has buried a husband and walked 200 miles with one bag and started cooking for 6 children 3 days later. I am the kind of woman who is not for sale at $8 a month, and I am not for sale at 80. How direct? I have not got time to be otherwise. Mr. Whitfield's children eat at 6 o'clock, and I would like to be home for it. Violet Sutley sat back in her chair. She crossed her hands in her lap. The smile she had been holding came off her face like a mask off a hook. Mrs. Braddock. Yes. Let me speak plain. Please. Jesse Whitfield will lose that ranch. He will lose it within the year. I have given him every chance, and he has refused every chance. The note comes due in October. He will not pay it. The land will go to me. The children will go to relatives back east if they have any, or to the orphanage in Cheyenne if they do not. And you, Mrs. Braddock, will be out of a job, and out of a roof, and out of a town that has any use for you. Possibly. Unless what? Unless you come and work for me, starting next week, $20 a month. Your own room with a window. You will cook for me, and you will tell me every Friday what is happening at the Whitfield Ranch. Clara did not move. You want a spy. I want an informant. I will not. You have not heard the rest. I do not need to hear the rest. Mrs. Braddock, listen. If you do not take this offer, I will make sure that no merchant in this town sells you a sack of flour. I will make sure that no doctor in this town treats Pearl Whitfield's lungs when winter comes, and her lungs will trouble her, Mrs. Braddock, because they are the lungs of a child who lost her mother in a cold spring. I will make sure that the school teacher will not take Henry back next term. I will make sure that the bank in Cheyenne calls Jesse Whitfield's note 30 days early. And I will make sure, Mrs. Braddock, that the entire territory of Wyoming knows that there is a fat widow at the Whitfield Ranch who is sleeping under the same roof as a man whose wife is not yet 2 years in the ground. The room went still. Clara stood up. Her chair scraped. She did not hurry. She did not raise her voice. She walked across the parlor until she was standing 6 feet from Violet Sutley's chair, and she looked down at her, and she spoke quiet. "Mrs. Sutley?" "Yes. My husband is buried under an oak tree in Missouri. I dug the hole myself. With a shovel I borrowed from a neighbor who would not lend me $1. I dug it 3 feet down because the ground was hard, and then I dug it 3 more feet because I would not let the wolves get him. My hands bled for a week. I buried him in the only suit he had. I said the words over him myself because the preacher would not come without $10, and I did not have $10. And then I walked to the road, and I started walking west. 200 miles. 3 days. Without sleep, without food, but for what strangers gave me, without rest." "Mrs. Braddock?" "I am not finished." Violet Sutley closed her mouth. "You think you are going to frighten me with the lungs of a child. You think you are going to frighten me with the gossip of a town that does not know my name. You think you are going to frighten me with 30 days on a banker's note? Mrs. Sutley, I have stood at the bottom of a grave I dug with my own hands, and I have looked down at the only man who ever loved me, and I have closed his eyes, and I have walked away. There is nothing you have got in this house, in this town, in this whole territory that is going to frighten a woman who has done that. You will regret this. I will not. You will be on the street by Christmas. Then I will be on the street. You will be on the street with 6 children whose father failed them. He has not failed them. He is keeping them, and I am helping him keep them. Why?" For the first time, Clara saw something in Violet Sutley's face that was not malice. It was something older. It was something hungrier. "Mrs. Sutley, why, Mrs. Braddock? Why would you do that? He is not your husband. They are not your children." "Because somebody fed me, Mrs. Sutley, when I was on that road. A woman in a soddy outside Independence. She had nothing. She gave me half. I have been trying for 3 weeks to pay her back, and I cannot find her because I do not remember the name of the road. So I am paying her back in Wyoming instead, to a man I do not know and to children who are not mine. That is why." She turned. She walked to the parlor door. She stopped with her hand on the brass. "Mrs. Sutley." "What?" "You said 3 husbands. Mr. Whitfield told me. 3 husbands, and you buried them all." "That is correct." "Did any of them love you?" The widow's face went white, then red, then the kind of pale that meant a woman had been struck somewhere a witness could not see. "Get out of my house." "Yes, ma'am." Clara walked down the hall. She walked out the front door. She walked down the path. Caleb was on the bench of the wagon exactly where she had left him, and his hand was on the brake, and his other hand was on a rifle she had not seen him put there. "Mrs. Braddock." "Caleb?" "How was tea?" It was bracing. He helped her up to the seat. He did not ask her what had happened. He turned the wagon around and clucked at the team, and they rolled out of Cheyenne in the late afternoon light, and Clara held the navy dress against her knees with both hands, and she did not speak for 2 miles. "Caleb." "Ma'am." "I have made an enemy." "I figured." "I have made an enemy who has money and time and a bank." "I figured that too." "Your daddy is not going to be pleased." The boy looked at her sideways. He grinned. It was the first grin she had seen on his face, and it was his mother's grin. She knew it without having met the woman. "Mrs. Braddock." "What?" "My daddy has not been pleased in 18 months. I expect he will live." She laughed. It came up out of her before she could stop it. She laughed all the way to the county line, and somewhere behind her, a woman in a black silk dress was already writing the letter that would burn down the barn. The county line came and went, and Caleb did not say a word for another mile. Then he cleared his throat. "Mrs. Braddock." "Caleb." "You did not eat the cake." "What cake?" "On the tray. There was a plate of cakes. Pa told me at breakfast. He said no matter what she offers, you do not eat the cake. Why? He did not say. Clara was quiet a moment. He was right. About what? About the cake. Why? Because if I had eaten it, child, I would have owed her something, and a woman like Violet Sutley keeps a ledger. The boy nodded slow. He flicked the reins. Caleb. Ma'am. How long has she been after the ranch? Since the spring my mother died. 6 months after. 3 months after. 3 months. She come to the porch herself that first time. Pa met her at the steps. He did not let her in the house. What did she say? She said she was sorry for our loss. Then she said she had a buyer for the River Acres. Then she said her bank could carry the doctor bills. Pa did not answer her. He turned around and walked into the house and closed the door. And she came back. Every month for a year. Different way each time. Different man each time. Different paper each time. Until your daddy borrowed. Until my daddy had to borrow. And she was the only bank that would lend. She was the only bank in 200 miles. Clara closed her eyes. The wagon rolled. The sun started to lean west. Caleb. Ma'am? Don't tell your daddy what I said to her. Which part? Any part. He's gonna ask. Tell him I drank the tea and came home. Tell him she was civil. Tell him she will not bother us again. The boy looked at her sideways. Will she not? She will. She just won't bother us in any way that I can stop with words. He nodded. He did not press her. The wagon rolled into the Whitfield gate at sundown, and Jesse was at the porch with his hat off, which he never did, and his hands at his sides, which he never did. And he watched the wagon come up the drive like a man watching a ship come into a harbor. He was not sure was friendly. He stepped off the porch. He came to the wagon. He held up his hand to her. Mrs. Braddock. Mr. Whitfield. Down. She put her hand in his. He took her weight. He set her on the ground, like she did not weigh what she weighed, and his hand stayed under her elbow a half-second longer than it had to, and then he stepped back. Children are at the table. Already. Rosie set the meal. She would not start without you. I am sorry I am late. Ma'am. Yes. You are not late. You are home. He walked back into the house ahead of her. Caleb behind her on the wagon seat made a sound that was not quite a cough. Mrs. Braddock? Hush, Caleb. I did not say nothing. Hush anyway. The next 4 days were quiet. Too quiet. Clara fed the children and dressed Rosie's wrist and read to Pearl from an old Bible that had been on a shelf since the missus had died, and Jesse came in for the noon meal every day, and once on Wednesday he sat on the porch in the evening, and Clara sat on the other end of the porch with her mending, and they did not speak, and they did not need to. On Thursday morning, Caleb rode into town for flour. He came back at noon with the wagon empty. Pa, Caleb! Mr. Hatcher would not sell to me. Jesse's spoon stopped halfway to his mouth. Say it again. Mr. Hatcher at the mercantile. He would not sell to me. He said his stock was low. I could see the flour barrels behind him, Pa. There were 8 of them. Full. 8. He said the same thing about the salt and the sugar and the coffee. He said his stock was low. He could not look at my face when he said it. Jesse set his spoon down. He did not look at Clara. He did not have to. Caleb? Pa. Saddle the bay, not the wagon. The bay. Yes, sir. And bring me my coat. Pa. What? Are you going to town? I am. Pa, do not. Caleb. Pa, do not. She wants you to. That is what she wants. That is why she told Hatcher. She wants you in town. She wants you angry. She wants somebody to see you angry. Then she has got something to write down. The boy's voice cracked at the end. Jesse stopped. He looked at his oldest son like a man looking at a stranger who had walked into his house and started speaking sense. Caleb. Yes, sir. Where did you learn that? From her pa. From Mrs. Braddock. On the wagon coming back from Cheyenne. She did not say it, but I watched her not say it for 15 miles. Jessie looked at Clara then. Long, steady. The kind of look a man gives a woman when he is starting to understand that he has hired more than a cook. Mrs. Braddock. Sir. What do we do? We do not go to town, Mr. Whitfield. We send Caleb to Laramie. It is 40 miles. He can be there and back in 2 days. The merchants in Laramie do not know Mrs. Sutley's name. 40 miles. 40 miles. In a wagon alone. I will not be alone. Caleb stood up from the table. I will take Henry. Henry is 8 years old. Henry is 8 years old, and he can sit on a wagon seat, and he can hand me reins, and he can shoot a rifle straighter than I can. You taught him, Pa. You taught both of us. Jesse closed his eyes. He opened them. Tomorrow at first light. Yes, sir. Both of you. And take the long rifle, not the short one. Yes, sir. The wagon rolled out before the sun came up Friday morning. Clara watched it go from the porch with Pearl on her hip. Pearl had her thumb in her mouth and her face against Clara's neck, and she was warm against the cold. Mama Brad. Yes, sweet girl. Henry come back. Yes, sweet girl. Henry will come back. Promise. I promise. It was the first sentence the child had spoken in 8 months that had a verb and a noun and a name in it. Clara felt it in her chest, like a hand pressing down. She did not say anything to Jessie, who was standing at the post watching the wagon disappear. She just shifted Pearl on her hip and walked into the kitchen and started breakfast. The day went slow. The day went slow because every hour the wagon was gone was an hour Clara was counting. Rosie was counting too. The twins were counting. Jessie was counting and pretending not to. By 2 o'clock, Pearl had fallen asleep on the kitchen floor with her head on Clara's foot. By 4 o'clock, Rosie had baked 3 pies. By 6 o'clock, the wind had come up. By 8 o'clock, Clara smelled smoke. She was at the basin. Her hands were in the water. She lifted her head. Rosie. Ma'am, open the back door. Why? Open it. The girl opened the door. The smell came in like a blow. Hay smoke. Wet wood smoke. The kind of smoke that was not a chimney, that was not a hearth, that was a building. Rosie. Yes, ma'am. The barn. The barn. Clara was already moving. Out the door. Off the porch. Around the corner of the house. The barn stood 80 yards from the house, and the south wall of it was glowing orange. The orange was eating up the wall like a thing alive. The wind was pushing it east toward the house, toward the chicken coop, toward the hay rick. Jesse came running from the smokehouse. He had an axe in one hand. The horses. Mr. Whitfield. The horses are in there. Both teams. Where are the children? In the kitchen? They are all in the kitchen. Clara turned to count, and her stomach turned with her. The twins were on the porch. Rosie was on the porch. But Pearl had been asleep on the kitchen floor. Pearl was not on the porch. Rosie. Ma'am. Where is Pearl? The girl's face went white. The girl's mouth opened and closed. I thought she was with you. She was on the floor. I thought you picked her up. Rosie, where is Pearl? The twins were already running back into the house. Samuel hit the kitchen door first. He came back out 2 seconds later. Mrs. Braddock, she is not in the kitchen. Look upstairs. Silas was already on the stairs. They could hear him pounding up. They could hear him pounding down. She is not upstairs. Pearl. Clara turned. She turned in a full circle. The wind shifted. The smoke from the barn doubled. And from inside the barn, faint as a kitten in a sack, came a sound. Mama Brad? Clara ran. She ran toward the barn. Jesse caught her arm. He caught her by the elbow, and his hand was iron. Mrs. Braddock? She is in there. Mrs. Braddock, you cannot. She is in there, Mr. Whitfield. I will go. I will go. You stay. You cannot lift her out alone if she is hurt, and you are also lifting a beam. I am stronger than I look. I have been stronger than I look my whole life. Let go of my arm. He let go. Mrs. Braddock. What? Wet your apron at the trough first. She did. She plunged the apron in the horse trough, and she pulled it up dripping, and she wrapped it around her head and across her mouth and her nose, and she did not look at him again. She ran. The barn door was still open on the north side. The fire was on the south. The smoke had filled the loft and was coming down. Clara went in low. She had to. The air at her shoulders was already poison. Pearl? A cough. Pearl, baby, you call out for me. Mama Brad. It came from the back, from the tack room. The tack room was on the south side near the fire. Clara crawled. She crawled on her hands and her knees over the straw, and her dress caught on a nail and tore at the hem, and she did not stop. The tack room door was closed. It was closed, and it was warm. Pearl, are you behind that door, baby? I scared. I know, sweet girl. Mama Brad, I scared. I am here. I am right here. Push the door, baby. Push it. It hot. I know. Use the apron. Push it with your arm wrapped in your dress. Use your dress. Push Pearl. Push it. The door pushed. It pushed 2 inches. Pearl had hidden under a saddle blanket on the lowest shelf. Clara could see her hair. Clara reached. She got a hand on the back of the child's nightdress. She pulled. The roof above the tack room cracked. Cracked like a rifle shot. Cracked like a dry tree in a hard freeze. Clara pulled the child against her chest. Clara turned. Clara could not see the door she had come through. The smoke had filled in behind her. She could see faintly where the orange was, and that meant where the orange was not. She pointed her body away from the orange, and she crawled. The beam came down behind her. The beam came down where the tack room had been 3 seconds before, and the heat of it hit her shoulders, and a piece of it, a piece the size of a man's arm, hit her right hand where it was holding Pearl's leg. Clara screamed. She screamed once short, and she did not scream again because she did not have the air. The pain in her hand was a thing she would deal with later. Right now there was a child to carry. Right now there were 20 feet to crawl. Right now there was a doorway that was not on fire if she could find it. She found it because Jesse was in it. Jesse Whitfield had come into the barn. He had come in behind her. He had a wet horse blanket over his shoulders, and he had a lantern in one hand, and he had Clara's name in his throat. Clara! It was the first time he had ever spoken her given name. Clara! Here. Where? Here, Jesse. He came toward her voice. He found her. He took Pearl from her arms in one motion, and he tucked the child under the wet blanket against his chest. Up. My hand. Up, Clara. On your feet. I cannot. You can. Up, now. On your feet, woman, on your feet. She got up. She did not know how. She got up, and he had his free arm around her waist, and he was half carrying her, and half running her toward the door, and the loft was coming down behind them, and she could hear the horses screaming, and she could hear the boys screaming, and they came out into the air, and the air was so cold and so clean she choked on it. Jesse did not stop at the door. He pulled her 30 more feet. He pulled her past the chicken coop. He pulled her into the yard between the house and the well, and he laid Pearl down on the grass, and he laid Clara down beside her, and he dropped to his knees. Pearl. The child coughed. The child coughed and coughed and cried, and the crying was the best sound any of them had ever heard. Pearl, Pearl, look at me. Look at your daddy. Daddy? Yes, baby. Daddy, I scared. I know, baby. Mama Brad. She is here. She is right here. She brought you out, baby. Daddy. What? My foot hurt. I know, baby. I know. He turned to Clara. Clara was on her back. Clara was looking at the sky, and her eyes were not focusing right, and her right hand was a thing she could not yet look at. Clara. Jesse. Your hand. I know. Let me see it. Jesse. Pearl first. Pearl is breathing. Pearl is breathing. Clara, and Rosie has her. Look. Rosie has her. Let me see your hand. She let him see her hand. He did not make a sound. He did not curse. He did not turn his head away. He took the wet blanket off his own shoulders, and he wrapped her hand in it slow and tight, and he held it. Clara. Yes. Look at me. I am looking. You ran in there. I did. You ran into a burning barn. Jesse. You ran in for my child. She is mine too. By now. She is mine too. His face moved. The whole face. The whole 18 months of the face. It moved, and it broke, and it held, because there were 6 children in the yard, and it had to hold, but she saw it move. Clara Braddock. Yes. You stay alive. I am alive. You stay alive. Do you hear me? You stay alive. I hear you, Jesse Whitfield. The barn collapsed in on itself an hour later. By that time the neighbors had come. They had come from 3 miles away because they had seen the orange in the sky, and they had come with buckets, and they had come too late for the barn. But they were not too late for the house, and the house was still standing because the wind had turned at 10 o'clock. The wind had turned because 3 miles down the road, 2 boys in a wagon coming back from Laramie had hit the dirt and prayed. Caleb told Clara that part later. But before that, before any of that, the doctor came. The doctor was a small man named Briggs, and he had not wanted to come because Mrs. Sutley had told him not to come, and he had come anyway because his own daughter had been Mrs. Whitfield's friend, and his own daughter had said when the messenger reached him, "Daddy, you go. You go right now or I will never call you Daddy again." Dr. Briggs looked at Pearl first. He said her foot was sprained, not burned. He said her lungs would be sore for a week. He said she would live. Then he looked at Clara's hand. "Mrs. Braddock." "Yes. I am going to clean this. It will hurt." "All right." "It will hurt a great deal." "All right. You will need this hand for the rest of your life, and it will not look like it did. I am sorry to tell you that." Dr. Briggs. "Yes. I have not used this hand to look pretty in 41 years. I am not going to start now." He almost smiled. He cleaned the hand. He did not let her see it. Jesse held her other hand the whole time. He held it in both of his hands. He did not let go. When the doctor was done, when Pearl was asleep in her own bed, when the boys were on the porch with buckets and wet rags, when Rosie was finally crying for the first time since her mother had died, Jesse sat down on the floor next to Clara's cot, and he put his head against the side of the mattress, and he stayed there. "Jesse." "Yes." "You called me Clara." "I did." 3 times. "More than that." "How many?" "I did not count." "Jesse." "Yes." "Why?" He lifted his head. His face was streaked black from the smoke. His eyes were red. He looked like a man who had walked through a wall for her and would do it again. "Because I have been watching you walk around my house for 3 weeks, woman. And I knew the day you stood at my gate. And I knew the day you stood up to Travis Bodine. And I knew the day you came home from Cheyenne with your chin up. And tonight when Rosie said, 'Where is Pearl?' and you ran. Clara, I knew tonight. I have known. I am sorry it took the barn." Clara did not answer right away. She closed her eyes. She felt his forehead against the side of the bed. "Jesse?" "Yes. It did not take the barn for me either." He let out a breath he had been holding for 18 months. Outside, the last beam of the barn fell into the ash. A lantern was lit on the porch. A wagon came up the drive carrying 2 boys and a bag of flour and a bag of salt and a bag of sugar from Laramie. A mile away in the night, a horse was carrying a thin man back to Cheyenne, with news that what Mrs. Sutley had paid him to do had not gone the way Mrs. Sutley had paid him to do it. And in a small room off the kitchen of the Whitfield ranch house, a woman with a bandaged hand and a man with a smoke-streaked face sat in the dark and held on to each other and did not say one more word. The morning after the fire came in cold and bright. Clara woke on the cot in the pantry room, and her hand was on fire under its bandage, and Jesse was asleep on the floor next to her with his back against the wall and his hat over his face. She did not wake him. She lay still, and she listened. She heard children breathing in the rooms above. She heard a kettle on the stove. She heard Rosie of all people humming. She had not heard Rosie hum in 3 weeks. Clara got up. She got up slow. She did not let her bandaged hand touch anything. She stepped over Jesse, and she did not wake him. She walked into her own kitchen, and Rosie was at the stove, and Rosie had pinned her hair back the way her mother used to, and Rosie turned around with a coffee cup in her hands. Mrs. Braddock. Rosie, sit down. I can stand. Sit down. I am pouring you coffee. With my own hands. You sat me on this counter for a week, and you fed me. You sit down. Clara sat. Rosie poured. The coffee was strong. The coffee was not burnt. The girl had learned. Where are the boys? Caleb and Henry are at the ash pile. They are looking for nails. Pa says we can save the nails. The twins are in the chicken coop. Pearl is asleep. And the neighbors. Mrs. Hayes from the South Road sent over a basket. Eggs, bread, a jar of preserves. There is a note. She said she should have come a week ago. She said her husband told her not to. She said her husband can keep his opinions in his own house from now on. Clara almost laughed. She had not met Mrs. Hayes. She knew her already. Mrs. Braddock. Yes. Pa cried last night. Rosie. He did. After you fell asleep. I came down to bring a quilt. He was on the floor by your cot. I did not say anything to him. I left the quilt and I went back upstairs. But he was crying, Mrs. Braddock. He was crying like a child. Clara did not answer. She drank the coffee. The coffee was good. The first rider came at 10 in the morning. He came up the road on a sorrel mare, and he was a man Clara did not know. Jesse met him at the gate. They spoke 10 minutes. The rider tipped his hat to Clara on the porch. He rode away. The second rider came at 11. The third came at noon. By 2 in the afternoon there had been 7 of them, and Jesse had stopped going to the gate because Caleb had taken over and the boy was speaking to grown men with the voice of a man. Clara sat on the porch with her bandaged hand in her lap and watched her boy do it. Caleb? Ma'am? Who are these men? They are ranchers, Mrs. Braddock, from all up and down the river. And what are they saying? They are saying they heard about the fire. They are saying they heard who said it. They are saying they will not stand for it. They heard who said it. Yes, ma'am. From who? From Travis Bodine. Clara turned her head. Travis Bodine talked. Travis Bodine rode out of Cheyenne last night, ma'am. He rode straight to the sheriff's office in Laramie. He gave a sworn statement. He gave it to the marshal. The marshal sent a wire this morning at 5. Why? Because Travis Bodine has a 5-year-old daughter, ma'am. He told the marshal so. He said when he heard there was a child in the barn, he did not sleep. He said his Mrs. Sutley could keep her dollars. He said he would rather hang for telling the truth than live for keeping her secret. Clara closed her eyes. That man has a daughter. Yes, ma'am. Lord. Yes, ma'am. The marshal came at 4 o'clock. He came in a buggy. He came alone. He was 60 years old, and he had a white mustache, and he had a star on his coat, and he stepped down at the gate, and he took his hat off before he walked up the path. Mr. Whitfield. Marshal Coombs. Mrs. Braddock. Sir. Ma'am, may I sit? Please. He sat on the porch steps. He turned his hat in his hands. Mr. Whitfield. Yes. Mrs. Sutley was arrested at her house this morning at 9 o'clock. She is in custody in Cheyenne. The charges are arson conspiracy to commit arson and the endangerment of a child, the child being your youngest daughter, sir. I wrote out here personal to tell you. I did not want it to come to you in a letter. Jesse did not speak for a long second. Marshal. Yes. She will have lawyers. She will, from Chicago most likely. She has the money. And the case. The case has Travis Bodine. The case has the boy he hired who has also turned. The case has a kerosene can with Mrs. Sutley's mercantile mark on it that was found behind your barn. Mr. Whitfield. Found by your son Caleb at first light this morning. Caleb on the porch behind his father did not move. Marshal? Yes. How long? 6 months till trial. A year maybe before sentence. She will fight. She has the dollars to fight. But Mr. Whitfield, sir, she will not be lending money in this territory again. Her bank in Cheyenne has already been put under federal eyes. The note on this ranch, sir, has been called in by the receiver. Jesse's hand came to his mouth. Called in. Yes, sir, as of yesterday. By the federal receiver, not by Mrs. Sutley. The receiver is a man in Denver. He has agreed, sir, to renegotiate the terms. He has agreed to terms a man can pay. I have a letter for you. From him. In my coat. The marshal handed over the letter. Jesse held it. He did not open it. Marshal? Yes. Why? Why what, sir? Why are you on my porch with this letter in your hand? The marshal looked at his hat. He looked at Clara. He looked at Jesse. Mr. Whitfield? Yes. My wife was friends with your wife. My wife has been telling me for 18 months that I was a coward for not coming out here. She was right, sir. I was. I was a coward because Violet Sutley sat in the front pew at my church, and I was afraid of her. I am not afraid of her anymore. That is why I am on your porch. He stood up. He put his hat back on. Mrs. Braddock. Yes. My wife sends her regards. She said to tell you she will be out tomorrow with a pie and a hand. In that order. Tell her thank you. Tell her yourself, ma'am. She will be here at 10. The marshal walked back down the path. The buggy rolled out the gate. Jesse stood on the porch with the letter in his hand, and he did not open it for a long time. Jesse? Yes. Open it. I cannot. Open it with me. He opened it. He read it. He read it twice. He sat down on the top step of the porch like a man whose knees had given out. Clara. What? He has cut the note in half. Who has? The receiver. In Denver. He has cut what we owe in half. He has given us 5 years to pay the rest. 5 years. 5 years. At what rate? At 3%. Clara sat down beside him. She had to do it slow because of her hand. He did not help her because he had forgotten his hands. Jesse. Clara. You can pay 3%. I can pay 3% in my sleep. Then we are saved. We are saved. And the children. The children are home. And the barn. The barn we will build. The neighbors will come. They will come this Saturday. The Hayes man will come. The Tolliver boys will come. Old man Briggs will come. And we will build a barn, Clara, that will outlast the both of us. Oh. She put her good hand on top of his hand. He did not look at her. He turned his hand over and he laced his fingers into hers and he looked at the road. Clara. Jesse. Will you marry me? Jesse. I am not asking right. I know I am not. I do not have a ring. I do not have a knee that bends like it should. I am asking on a porch with my hands smelling like smoke and my wife 18 months in the ground. I am asking because I will not sleep tonight if I do not ask. Will you marry me, Clara May Braddock? She did not answer right away. She looked at the yard. She looked at the ash pile where the barn had been. She looked at Caleb, who was suddenly very interested in a piece of fence 200 yards away. She looked at Pearl, who had come out onto the porch in her nightdress and was watching them with a thumb in her mouth. Pearl. Mama Brad. Come here, baby. Pearl came. Pearl climbed up into Clara's lap. Pearl put her head against Clara's chest. Pearl. What? Your daddy just asked me a question. What question? He asked if I would be your mama for true. Not Mama Brad. Just Mama. For all of you. Forever. Pearl took her thumb out of her mouth. Yes. Yes, what, baby? Yes, Mama. Clara looked at Jesse. Jesse was crying. He was not hiding it. Jesse Whitfield. Clara. Yes. Yes. Yes, Jesse. I will marry you. He pulled her against him. He pulled both of them, her and Pearl, against him on the top step of the porch, and Pearl laughed for the first time anyone in that house could remember, and the laugh went out into the yard, and Caleb at the fence put his hat over his face, and Rosie at the kitchen window pressed her hand against the glass, and the twins in the chicken coop heard the laugh, and stopped what they were doing, and Henry on the back porch lifted his head, and the whole broken house that had been a quiet house for 18 months, woke up. The neighbors came on Saturday. They came from 12 miles in every direction. They came in wagons and on horses and on foot. They came with hammers and saws and milled lumber and water buckets. Mrs. Hayes came with 2 pies, and her sleeves rolled up to her elbows. Mrs. Briggs, the doctor's wife, came with a basket of bandages and a box of bread. Old man Tolliver, who had not spoken to Jesse Whitfield in 2 years over a property line, came with his 3 sons and a wagon of fence posts, and he did not say a word about the property line, and Jesse did not bring it up. The barn went up in 3 days. It went up because 38 men and 22 women and 41 children put it up. It went up because Clara fed every one of them out of a kitchen with one good hand and a 14-year-old girl who had become her right hand. It went up because Caleb Whitfield, 16 years old, climbed the highest beam himself and drove the last nail. It went up because the people of that valley had decided all at once that they were done being afraid of a woman in a black silk dress who had never set foot on any of their farms. When the last beam was up, when the last nail was driven, Mrs. Hayes climbed up onto the back of a wagon and clapped her hands. Friends? The yard went quiet. Friends. We have a barn. We have a barn because the Whitfields are our neighbors, and we should have remembered that a long time ago. I am Sarah Hayes. My husband is Tom. We live 3 miles south. I came here today with a pie in a hand because a woman I have not yet met properly ran into a burning barn for a child that was not her own. I am ashamed it took that, friends. I am ashamed of every Sunday I sat in that pew and did not come out here. And I am asking today to be forgiven. By Jesse, by the children, and by Mrs. Braddock. Clara stood at the kitchen door with her good hand on the frame. Mrs. Hayes? Yes, ma'am. There is nothing to forgive. Ma'am, there is. Mrs. Hayes, there is bread on this porch. Come and eat it. The yard laughed. The yard came up. The food was passed. The day went on. That night, when the neighbors had gone home, when the children were asleep, when the new barn stood dark and tall against the sky, Clara walked out into the yard alone. Her hand was healing. Her hand would never look the way it had. She did not care. She walked out to the new barn, and she put her good hand on the wood. The wood was rough and warm from the day. She closed her eyes. Clara. He was behind her. She did not turn. Jesse. You came out alone. I needed a minute. I know. I was waiting on the porch. Until I was not waiting anymore. She turned. He was 3 feet from her. The moon was up. Jesse Whitfield. Mrs. Braddock. Soon to be Whitfield. Soon to be. Jesse. Yes. I have spent 41 years of my life being told I was too big to be loved. I have heard it from preachers. I have heard it from my own mother. I heard it from every man in a small town in Missouri who decided I was easier to mock than to court. The man I married, my Henry, he did not care. He told me the day he asked me, he said, Clara, I am marrying you because you are the biggest woman I ever saw and the biggest woman I ever loved. He said it like that, with those words. He sounds like a good man. He was a good man. And he died, and I thought when he died, that was the only love a woman of my size was ever going to get in this life. I thought I had used my one. I thought I would walk the rest of my days, and there would be nobody to look at me the way he looked at me. And I was at peace with that, Jesse. I had made my peace. And then I came up your road, and your boy met me at the gate, and your little girl drew me a picture where I was the biggest thing in it, and she did not draw me big to laugh at me. Jesse, she drew me big because I was the biggest thing in her world that day. And then you called my name in a burning barn. And I knew when you called my name that there was a second love coming for me in this life that I was not expecting. Clara, let me finish. Yes, ma'am. I am not going to shrink, Jesse. Not for you. Not for your children. Not for the town that is just now learning my name. I am the size I am, and I am going to be the size I am till the day I am buried. And I am going to take up every inch of space God gave me to take up. Do you hear me, Jesse Whitfield? I hear you. And I would not have you any other way. I would not have 1 inch of you any other way. You hear me, Clara May?" "I hear you." "Then come on home. Home is right there." "I know it is." He held out his hand. She took it. They walked back across the yard together, and her bandaged hand was held against her chest, and her good hand was in his, and the children were sleeping in a house that had a mother in it again. And the barn at their back was new wood and old promises, and the woman who had tried to take it all from them was sitting in a cell in Cheyenne writing a letter that nobody in this valley was ever going to answer. Clara May Braddock was 41 years old. She had buried one husband, and she would in time marry another. She was a big woman. She had been a big woman her whole life. She had walked into Wyoming with one bag and a dead man's apron and $8 promised at the end of the month. She had walked into a house that did not want her, and she had fed it. She had walked into a town that did not want her, and she had stood up to it. She had walked into a fire, and she had brought a child out. She had earned every inch of the ground under her feet. And from that night on, until the night many years later, when she would lie down for the last time in a bedroom upstairs, in that same ranch house, with 6 grown children around her bed, and a man's hand in her hand, Clara May Braddock Whitfield never once apologized for the space she took up in this world. She had been told all her life that she was too much. She had finally found a family that knew there was no such thing.